Hello, everyone in the craft beer world. Thanks for joining us today. We are here to talk about brand consistency in the craft beer world. My name is Ben Weston. I'm with Hoptown Handles and SeaThirst Creative. Hoptown Handles makes tap handles for craft breweries. SeaThirst is a full-service branding and design firm. The one quick caveat before I allow my panelists to introduce themselves. We're going to be talking about brand identity and branding, and a lot of people have different definitions of that. So as we go through this conversation, we're going to be using that term brand identity to describe the way in which a brewery presents itself to the public. That can take many forms. And we'll be specifically diving into how the brand identity is being presented visually. As we go through this, please ask questions. We'd love to hear your feedback in the comments section, or you can private chat it, direct chat it to us, I believe. And so we'll try and leave a few minutes at the end for question and answer if you don't ask it during the main section. And with that out of the way, I'd like to let our panelists introduce themselves and tell us their role and how they got to where they were today, the short version. So Aaron, why don't we start with you?
Wow, do the short version of anything. That sounds so unlike me. Hey, everybody. I am Aaron Gore. I am the Senior Director of Business Development for Community Brewing Ventures. We discover, produce, and promote the most innovative craft brands from across the beverage industry, which is a really fancy brand-focused way of saying that we really help small beverage creators from all over the world help access a market that is increasingly difficult for them to really reach to that next level and really participate in. I've been in the industry for a long time. I've been everything from a sales rep on the ground all the way to running sales teams to being a freelance sales consultant, just about everything in between. And Ben, I know you said we're going to try and leave some space at the end for questions, but we're the last one of the day, baby. We can go as long as we need.
Oh, nice.
As long as we need to. Elliot, over to you.
So my name is Elliot Seidler. I'm the owner and brewer of Civic Brewing in Sopchoppy, Florida. So we're a super small operation, kind of in a small town of 600. So small brewery, one barrel system. But I've been in the industry about 5 years now. Worked for a couple breweries, and this was the next stepping stone in my career. So hopefully I can provide some useful information as far as branding goes, because I just did all of that.
Right on. Pat Delps here with Seismic Brewing Company. We're based out of Santa Rosa, California. We brewed our first batch of beer. Let's see, May of 2017 now. So we've been around the block here for a few years. And been with quick shout out to Hoptown Handles. Been with y'all since day one, so I'm sure they can be a part of our story there. But of course, man. We focus on brewing high quality craft beer in the most environmentally sustainable manner possible. So looking to bring more of that to the industry and try to make the business case for conscious capitalism. I've been director of marketing here for a couple of years now, but I've been in the industry in some way, shape, or form, whether it be in wine sales or beer production since about 2012. Thanks, folks.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. So as I kind of talked about in that stumbling intro of mine, we're talking about brand identity and more specifically brand consistency and how we're keeping a brand consistent across all areas that you're presenting yourself to your target customers. So if you each could kind of give us, in just a couple sentences, your breweries or your businesses, Aaron. I'll let you approach that how you want to approach it in terms of whether you're talking about the businesses you advise or CBV itself. I'll let you kind of decide what makes most sense for you. But back to, in a sentence or two, please describe your business's brand identity.
Well, given that mine is definitely on the complicated side, to say the least, Elliot or Pat, do you guys want to lead off so this doesn't turn into a what the hell is CBV conversation?
Yeah, I can start off. So, as I said earlier, I'm in a small town, middle of nowhere, Florida. So, kind of where I'm at, a lot of people haven't been to breweries. So, it's kind of introducing my brewery in a way that appeals to a lot of people that haven't been before. So, as far with my branding goes, it's pretty straightforward, easy to read. We ended up going with a logo that kind of represents the area really well as well. So antlers, oak leaves. It's a big hunting area, a lot of natural preserves around here. So it kind of helps promote the local identity of the area, or that was the goal at least.
I can jump in next here. So with Seismic, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. We're focused on brewing true style beers with our own Northern California flair. So whether that be using grown and malted barley that was grown and malted here in California, or trying to contribute something new to the IPA conversation, right? Which is difficult to do, as everybody here can attest to. We try to make that, but we're being uncompromising and making high quality craft beer, but we're also trying to do it with the environment and our community in mind. So again, trying to make that business case for sustainable brewing practices, as well as conscious capitalism, right? We're trying to prove that business can turn a profit and still be a force for good in our communities. And so that's really reflected in a lot of our branding that you'll see out there. So Seismic, obviously that's something everyone in California can relate to, short, easy to remember, but there's a lot of energy behind that as well. So trying to focus more on that kinetic energy, excitement versus the destructive side of Seismic activity. But that's my elevator pitch.
Earthquakes as creators. I'm not sure I've heard that one before, but I love it.
Look at Hawaii, man. It's all volcanic islands, right?
So from our standpoint over at CBV, and part of the reason I want these guys to kind of take the lead on this is exactly what they said is exactly how we approach things. I spend all day, every day working with some amazing breweries, some amazing brewery owners, creators, and our entire business was built on the premise that literally nobody is able to tell the story of these small companies the way that they are. So if I had to talk about the way that we approach our brand identity is built around maintaining fidelity and maintaining the authenticity that these breweries come in with. All we want to do is amplify what they're already doing because they are creating something real and they're creating something very authentic every day just by being around and just by doing what it is that they love. So if we're able to take that and we're able to bring it to a bigger audience without changing the message, that's how we know that we've done our job.
And each and every brewery really does have its own, not only its own brand identity, but its own identity, its own values, its own, ethos. And so I'd like to kind of dig into that a little bit. A lot of times companies will develop a set of core values or a company ethos or guiding principles before they develop their brand identity. Not everyone does though. So I wanted to kind of explore if you guys did that and if you found that to be a valuable process. Here at Hoptown, we did. So our core values are do right, truth, trust, and transparency, and always be improving. And that has provided us a lens with which to focus everything that we do and reflect on it. So have you guys done that? And if so, how'd it go? Pat, you want to lead off?
Good. Yeah, when we initially sat down, we hatched the idea that, hey, we want to start a brewery. But before we even got to like naming and everything, we thought like what are our values going to be? And the two we immediately all agreed upon were being totally uncompromising, creating high quality craft beer, not cutting any corners, being reverent and having a deep respect for brewers of the past and beer styles there, but also not being scared to innovate and improve upon that. And the other core pillar of ours was sustainability. And when I say sustainability, it's not just from an environmental. We're trying to look at our business through the triple bottom line, which is people, our community, planet, the environment, and then profits or the economy. How are we benefiting the place that we live in, the local economy? So that's my really roundabout way of saying, yes, we answered those questions up front, and then we built a brand around those values.
So for our purposes, one of the ways to define a brand is that a brand isn't what you think about yourself. A brand is what other people think about you. But another way of really summing that up is that a brand is your customers' expectations of you. You can't really build a set of expectations unless you build a set of expectations. And unless you know what is important to you as a company and you know what you're trying to accomplish, it's really very difficult to create that identity in people's minds. So it's one of the things that we encourage. We've done it ourselves. It's one of the things that any of the brands that we work with, actually one of the first things we do before we even sign a contract is sit down and effectively build a set of brand guidelines, build a set of brand values and ethos, just so that we are able to speak to it with the same fidelity that they would be doing on their own. But some of the groups we've worked with, they haven't put it to paper yet. So what we actually do with them is get them to take these things that they know here, and they're trying to put out into the world, and get them to actually just sit it down and build it into a document, because it's amazing how much of a difference it has when everybody in your organization, no matter who they are, no matter how recently they came on, can reference that and say, oh, that's who we are. And this thing that we were talking about, that's not who we are. Maybe that's all the decision-making we need to do.
Elliot?
Yeah, so as you can tell by the name Civic Brewing, my main focus with starting this brewery is being a community hub, since Civic's the root word for community. So going in, that was my main goal, is to have someone in the area where everyone can come gather, provide a service to everyone in the area. So other than that, I mean, that was my main aspect coming in. I want to do great beer as well, but the main focus for me is just having a community hub in the area.
Awesome. We've talked about, we keep mentioning the customer, and we've talked about what your brewery is doing and your values as a brewery, but you don't have a brand identity unless you know who you're speaking to, right? Because the goal of that brand identity is to communicate something to that customer. So if you're talking to that customer, you have to know who they are. Who are your target customers? Let's start with Elliot.
Yeah. So my target customers are pretty much anyone within a hour's drive, since I'm the only brewery within that distance. So it's people local to the county. Yeah, I know. So yeah, that's the big thing for me, is appealing to the people in a rural area and trying to meet their expectations of what they expect out of a brewery. So that's the biggest thing with creating our brand, doing all of that, is have something relatable to everyone in the area.
For our target customers, we're a brewery founded and operated by a lot of elder millennials and early Gen Xers, and that's very much who our core demographic has shaped out to be. So we've been speaking in a way that's resonating very much with them. But where we are based in the Bay Area, like we're in Santa Rosa, we're with some giants out here. There's Bear Republic, Lagunitas, there's Russian River. So we've got our work cut out for us here. So, for a long time, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, craft beer was just, if you brew it, they will come. Nowadays, having a good craft beer isn't enough anymore. So how do we differentiate ourselves? So making sure that we were speaking to the Bay Area clientele and customers was very, very important to us when we were initially developing the brand. Something we still strive to do.
I think it's also important, and I think Elliot and Pat have done a good job of summarizing it for their own breweries, is just keeping in mind that you have to consider your customer, and consider your audience, no matter what you're trying to put out there. As breweries, we have a really weird relationship when it comes to customers, because our customers are really only our customers in our own tap rooms. So if you're talking about distribution, your customer is the wholesaler, their customer is the retailer. The end user is a very different person, but you can't sell to the wholesaler unless they have a room at the retailer. You can't sell to the retailer unless they have space on their shelves, because it's getting taken by the customer. So you have effectively 3 different layers of consumer that you really have to be able to speak to. On paper, as a brand, that seems to make it really difficult, because it makes it really tough to come up with consistent messaging and really be able to put one impression of who you are, because they each have very, very different needs. And it's important to tailor the message to each of those. But it all starts with knowing who you are, because it's all going to be building off of the same foundation. So I always tell any of my clients back when I was doing consulting, when you're trying to build a brand and you're really trying to build an identity for yourself, just ask yourself 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do? Why is it important? If you get those 3 things down, then you've already got a pretty good base to be able to tailor a message to either one of those, or to any of those 3 different classes of customer.
Now, Aaron, that was a great segue, talking about messaging. So we're talking about this idea of the message that you're presenting to your target customer, right? That is essentially your brand, but you have to make that now come alive, right? So now we're getting into this concept of your visual identity. How did you guys make this come alive, this idea of your brand identity come alive with your visual identity? And what did you look for when you were looking for we'll call it a partner, like a creative agency to develop your branding identity? So kind of a 2-parter. So how did you make your brand come alive with your visual identity? And then how did you find a partner to help you create that? Aaron, you want to take the lead?
I'll jump right in, because I love the sound of my own voice. When it comes to finding somebody to do any sort of graphical work for you, I always tell people, treat it like a tattoo artist, which is terrible, because a lot of people don't treat tattoo artists like tattoo artists. It is going to have you are the customer. It is going to be on your body, or in this case, your company, and could have very real effects. But you are also not an artist. So you need to come in with the concept. You need to come in with the values that are going to inform it. But you need to be able to trust that the artist is going to have a better sense of sensibility, a better sense of aesthetics than you. So you really need to find a partner who understands your vision, but who is still able to bring their own subject matter expertise in when it comes to actually designing that. And the flip side of that is consistency. You cannot build a brand without consistency. That's visual consistency, messaging consistency. So make sure that this is a person who does not drive you too crazy, because good Lord, I'm going to drive them crazy. So I need somebody who's going to put up with me for the next few years.
I would absolutely echo what Aaron's comments were here. I think when we were initially looking for a branding agency, a design firm, we were still really green and new to it, so we didn't quite really know what to look for. So we went actually through a couple of design firms before we landed with our ultimate artist, Josh Emmerich, and he was the right fit. So what do I mean by that? We were looking at different artists' artworks. Josh kind of spoke to us in a different way. He understood beer, which was very evident. I apologize. Just from his clientele that he's worked with, but he was also willing to have a healthy back and forth. I think if you're hiring a designer or something that's just saying yes to everything, your end product's not going to be quite as good as it possibly can be. So I would encourage you to, within reason, find a designer that's willing to, push back a little bit and make a intelligent argument for their ideas. And I think you're going to end up having a much better result. So, what did Josh bring to the table? He kind of helped us flesh out the beer name. We thought we came to him with beer names and like kind of what our company ethos and values were, and he was able to help us bring a lot of that stuff to life. So conveying motion, having natural, uniquely Northern California scenery in all of our artwork that works seamlessly together.
Yeah, you guys do have some the illustrations that you guys have on your cans and other point of sale materials is very striking.
Thank you.
Very unique. So nicely done.
So yeah, I completely agree with both of you guys. Having a designer that's willing to push back and has a lot of creative input was really important for me. So Taylor at SeaThirst, I wouldn't have any good branding if it weren't for her, because she's the one that came with all of the good ideas, and because I wasn't quite sure where I was going with it. So her constant input and kind of pushing me in a certain direction really helped me a lot to realize my own brand identity. So that was huge.
She does all right work.
I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Ben and his team here. We initially were looking for tap handles, having that consistency between our branding, but also having a partner that's, again, willing to push back and improve upon the end product. I can't stress how important that is. So Ben, hats off. Cheers to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's important to touch on the difference between a design on that is on a screen versus a design that is going to be coming to life in a physical form, whether it's in your tap room, whether it's your tap handles, whether it's your cans. And something may look good, may look right when you see it on a screen, but you don't really know sometimes until you actually see it in person. So whenever you can, I think it's really important to ask for some sort of 3D rendering or 3D mock-up where you can actually see how your product is going to live in the world, because we live in a 3D world. We don't live, although we live quite a bit more in front of a computer screen nowadays, but people do get out every now and again.
And please, for God's sake, do up a rendering of your can label art, because if I'm looking at the front of that freaking label and I have no idea who made it or what style it is or what the name of the beer even is, you got a problem. I see it flat on the screen. You can see all of that. Sitting on a shelf, I can't see any of that. And I'm not going to rotate the damn thing 8 times just to find out. Drives me up a wall.
Yeah, so I've seen some just spectacularly creative illustrations on cans, and it's amazing. But then I have to ask myself, who brewed this, and what style of beer is it? Because they don't actually tell you. It makes me want to buy it, but I want that extra information. So that's, from my perspective, always get your logo, your brand on the front of that can somewhere, as Aaron said.
And before the people who I know are going to protest on that and are going to hit me up on Facebook afterwards say anything, no, if you're selling it directly over your bar counter at your tap room, it's not as important. I get it. You sell hazy IPAs every Saturday, and this one's Citra Mosaic. That one's Mosaic Citra. That's fine. But if it's going on a shelf, I need to know who the hell made it. Soapbox down.
Now we've touched on this, the cans. We've talked about we've talked a little bit about tap handles and the various points of contact. Which points of contact do each of you feel are the most important points of contact for you when you're trying to reach your customers? Pat, we can start with you.
Sure. I try to put myself in the consumer's shoes. I take off my beer marketing hat and try to put on my consumer hat, and say, what am I looking for? And to me, the top three things I always come back to are packaging. So for all of your off-premise applications, tap handles for your draft accounts, as well as social media. In a world where we're consistently and more communicating digitally, having that consistency in your social media game and your digital platforms is becoming very, very important. So if I'm a consumer and I'm looking at packaging, to the point y'all made earlier, like who's brewing it? Sure, has it got cool artwork? Yeah, that's definitely a selling point for me. I like it. But brewery name, beer style, and beer name are going to be extremely important when you're sitting on a beer aisle with 5,000 other choices. how do you make the choice just by kind of doing your initial scan, right? The same goes for your tap handles. If you could have the coolest hand carved that tap handle in the world, but I don't know what the beer is, I'm going to go with a beer that I can read. So my 2 cents.
Yeah, I don't think most people in the industry take it long enough to stand in your typical beer aisle and realize how unbelievably intimidating that is for the average consumer. And if you are scanning those, I mean, let's just own up to the fact that most of us buy our beer based on, we do the equivalent of like picking your favorite football team based on their jersey. Like, really cool helmet design. I really like that. That's my favorite team. It's the exact same thing. Like, I've been in this industry most of my adult life. All I do is beer, and I probably run into more brands than almost anybody else in the industry, given my role. And I still, in my local Harris Teeter grocery store, look on that shelf and see brands I've never even heard of before. For your average consumer, they've heard of like 2. So you really need that messaging and that branding that's consistent enough to really jump out at them. That's billboardable, which is extremely valuable because that is additive, that's incremental. And to be able to speak to them that way. The other thing I don't think nearly enough breweries pay attention to is that your brand does extend to the entirety of your tap room. It's not just having your logo on the wall. Like, at the end of the day, the dirty secret of a brewery tap room is the only thing that you have on your average bar is the fact that you have the experience of being a brewery tap room. This is an opportunity for you to create that experience. And if your idea of branding is we bought the cheapest tables we could get and we slapped the cheapest paint we could get on the walls and there's no decorations, then it doesn't matter how good your beer is. They're going to walk out saying, man, that's a great beer I could get at a much better venue.
Elliot, do you want to chime in on this one at all?
Yeah. So as far as distributing goes, I'm still new to that scene, so I haven't gotten that far out there yet. But I can totally agree with the taproom aspect. So where I'm at, all the places have done that. So super cheap tables, not nicely done. So my concept here, creating the brand identity at the brewery, was make it a really nice place to be. And that's one thing I get a ton of compliments about is the atmosphere in the brewery. So that goes a long way to promoting your brand and building that strong base for the future, you know?
And it doesn't even need to be expensive. It just needs to be a place that, like, when you're looking at it, ask yourself, if this wasn't my beer, if this wasn't my space, would I want to spend time here? I don't think if most is way overstating, but I don't think there's a lot of brewery owners that if they really honestly ask themselves that question, you know, they'd have to answer, man, not really.
Yeah, and Ellie, just because you don't have, you know, a lot of tap handles out in your community or cans out in the grocery stores doesn't mean you don't have that point of contact. Like you said, that tap room is a huge point of contact. But you've also got, as Pat mentioned, your social media. You've got your presence, your own presence in the community is a huge point of contact because you're out in that community all the time. So I think, you know, having, you know, knowing all your points of contact is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Josh Lindsay had a question. Josh, we will get to your question in just a minute. It's 2 questions away. Before we get to Josh's question, how have each of you been able to keep your brand visually consistent across these various points of contact? And is it ever okay to deviate from your brand guidelines? I know a lot of people have a like published brand guidelines that their designer gave them. Do you find that it's ever okay? So 2-parter, how do you stay consistent, and is it okay to deviate? Elliot, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So for me, I realized the key to staying consistent is just constantly consult the person doing the designs. That's the easiest way. If I have a new idea, talk to her. If she thinks it's a good idea, I go for it. If she comes with me like, then I reconsider it and try to figure out a better way to do it. And that is what has helped me out the most, is just going through them, talking to them, and having that second point of view in order to create a better consistency with it. And then
sorry, go ahead.
What was the second question again? Sorry.
When is it okay to deviate from that? And I think you kind of spoke to that as like, you'll talk to your designer, but
yeah, exactly.
Aaron?
Yeah. So as far as keeping consistent design, I mean, brand guidelines, actual written brand guidelines are important. To Elliot's point, find yourself, the real concept here is it's a chief brand officer. It's your CBO, and in a lot of cases for a brewery, that's going to be you as the owner. Or if you have a really good graphic designer, somebody who's really helped build the look and feel of your brand, then it'll be them. But you need somebody whose job it is to have just as much of a vision for the brand as you have a vision for the business and the model and what it is that you're doing. As far as when is it okay to deviate from your brand guidelines, the first big thing I'd say is that if nobody knows your brand, it's not okay to deviate from your brand guidelines because you're not gaining anything from doing so. You're still building the brand. So if you're deviating from your brand guidelines, not only is no one going to know, it's going to make it harder for them to care about the core brand. The other big thing I would say is, in general, unless you are doing it specifically to do one of two things, either be transgressive and play on the fact you're deviating from your brand guidelines, or B, building brand equity in and of itself for a part of your business, you should probably stick to your brand. It's usually the safest bet. You don't see Disney going real far outside of their brand guidelines. You don't see Apple going real far outside of their brand guidelines. You don't see Coca-Cola going real. You're seeing the pattern here. You can do it to be transgressive. You can do it to really grab attention because it's so out of character. But usually if you're going outside your brand guidelines, you're going to be far better off building a new brand line, basically building something new into your brand hierarchy. Something similar to Voodoo Ranger for New Belgium. Yes, it's New Belgium. Yes, we're aware it's New Belgium, but I know most craft beer drinkers have no idea that's from New Belgium. They built new brand equity for it, and they're able to harvest that brand equity for stuff that the traditional New Belgium brand is just ill-equipped for, and vice versa. But in general, protect your brand. It is one of the most important assets that you have in the long term. And there's a reason that of the more successful companies in the industry, take, for example, if Other Half announces that they're doing a beer, no one stops to see if it's going to be worth drinking. They've built a pretty good brand around it. And if it's hazy, it's going to be worth drinking and people are going to go out of their way for it. The same with Sierra Nevada. They've spent 40 years building up a reputation for fantastic beer. People don't think about it that way, but that reputation for great beer is part of their brand. So protect that, cultivate it, and harvest it when you need it for something, but don't deviate from it unless you really have a good reason to.
Great points, Aaron. And I'd agree with a lot of that sentiment as well. Part of it is, I think, dependent upon what you're getting back to this brand ethos and values, right? If your brand ethos is to constantly be evolving and changing and experimenting, then maybe some small deviations for your branding make a little bit of sense. If you are, I would echo the same sentiments that if you are just starting out and you're already doing a huge 180 or a shift away from your existing brand guidelines, you're just going to create more confusion out there and end up, I think, hurting yourself in the long run. As cool and fun as shiny new objects like new marketing can be, maintain the course, I guess it's my big message with it. I think having small deviations, using small color palette changes are good to create differentiation between your brands, but still having everything within the same family, the same ethos. So, and branding overall. So if somebody sees a new brand that you're just launching into cans, they see that and immediately recognize, that's Seismic brand. Oh, that's Civic. And not kind of look at it sideways and be like, I don't know who this is. But there was a point made earlier by Aaron as well. Sorry, I keep giving you too much kudos here, Aaron. I got to beat you up eventually. But
you will regret that.
So for instance, for us, we just launched a new brand called Tremor California. we treat it as a different brand proposition. It's, same brewery, same sales team and everything, just a new project. But we're approaching it as a different offer. It's crisp, clean, approachable, highly crushable beers. And we developed branding to reflect that ethos as well.
I love where you guys took that. I wasn't expecting you guys to kind of go that direction. I think it's fantastic. And I'll admit, I was trying to get at something when I asked the question about deviating, and I do want to just bring it up real fast. So what on my end of the spectrum, when I get oftentimes our customers, the breweries will send us their brand guidelines, and I'll look at it. Sometimes they can be very restrictive. The brand guidelines are. They'll say, okay, only this much space around the letters, and they really kind of paint you into a box. And then we say, okay, how can we convert this into a tap handle? And oftentimes it's like, oh, well, they don't really want us to rotate anything, but they've only thought of their brand or their logo and such in a horizontal nature. They haven't necessarily thought of it in a vertical nature. And so oftentimes we'll have to deviate from our customers' brand guidelines, the published brand guidelines at least, in order to come up with a visually striking piece. Sometimes they bite, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they say go back to stay within the box. But sometimes we find that it does help to at least explore deviating from those guidelines.
Well, and I think what you've really touched on isn't the point of deviating from the guidelines. It's a misuse of the guidelines. It's you need to have them be directive. You need to have those things laid out. But if you're getting so tight in, a couple of things have happened. For one, you've restricted your brand so much, you're not giving it the opportunity to tell you what it is. And that's a mistake I see with a lot of companies is, they're so quick to tell you who exactly they are. And then you ask any of their customers and they have a very different opinion. Customers are going to tell you what your brand is. It's just up to you to be able to provide them with the direction to where they come to the same conclusion you did. So if you get so overly prescriptive, especially early on, that can really screw you up long term. And if you do have a well-cultivated brand identity, at that point, secondary and tertiary logos should have been something you thought of a while ago. And that really makes the job of people like yourself, Ben, who need to put it in different contexts. Things like favicons, like a lot of breweries have never thought about that. You get to the point where that's a pretty important thing to consider if you're big enough to where you're getting a lot of website traffic. So, let build the guidelines, build who you are, let the customer fill in the details for you. And then as you begin to cultivate that brand identity, make sure that you're building on top of it. It's not static, and it should never be static, and it should never be immutable. And that I think is a pretty big mistake, is that day one before the brewery opens, some folks say, well, this is our brand identity. Glad we got that out of the way. That's really not how it should work at all.
And what I love is when breweries have, they don't have just the one logo or two logos. They have a word mark, and then they have a separate icon. And then they have different logo options that merge those together. And that allows the creatives, the people that are going to be working with your brand, allows them some creative freedom to come up with something that is visually striking. So I do appreciate it when our clients send us that. And I'm going to jump into Josh's question. Any thoughts on tap handle branding when it comes to billboarding? Similar taps with different stickers or magnets versus iconic or unique taps for each brand or beer. And I think this also touches on, how you're differentiating your style branding. Are you differentiating your style branding on tap handles? And, when it comes to like flagships, what are you doing for those? How much are you differentiating it?
Are you Sierra Nevada? Do you have Sierra Nevada Pale Ale? Are you Pabst Blue Ribbon? No? No one knows that much about your flagship. Get one unified tap handle where people can recognize it across the board. Honestly, unless it is a separate brand family, unless it is something so distinctive that that is what you are known for above all else, you're better off getting something that is billboardable. There's nothing more ridiculous than going to a tap takeover and you're like, well, you guys only have three beers on? No, we got 4. Where's the other one? Yeah, I don't overestimate just how iconic you are. Even some fairly large regional breweries, your flagship's probably not as well known as you think it is. And even if it is, you're usually better not off lending its brand equity to the rest of your portfolio than sequestering it. That's my thoughts.
I will also say, as a consumer, when I approach a bar, I'm looking for what's the brewery, what's the style. And if I can't easily tell those two things within a couple seconds, then I'm usually moving on. Pat or Elliot, would you guys like to chime in on this one?
Sure. I would definitely echo that. When I'm a consumer, I'm at the bar, I'm looking for brewery name, beer name, and style. If I can't figure that stuff out, I'm typically moving on pretty quick. So what we do at Seismic is we've got our Seismic logo kind of front and center on every single tap handle. It says Seismic Brewing down the side of each one. And then we've got magnets, interchangeable magnets for our brands. So depending on what they have on tap, you can swap something in for it. Now, Tremor California is obviously a different proposition, so we have a dedicated tap handle for that. But even beer brands within that bigger portfolio still follow the same Tremor branding, so it's still very recognizable as Tremor California.
I'll be honest, I had no idea that you guys were the ones behind Tremor. I've been seeing that pop up left and right lately, so it's actually really funny. You got mission accomplished on the separate brand family.
Thank you.
Now, Elliot, you're not doing too much distribution. So, does this question apply to you much? Or let's say, how do you differentiate your styles in your tap room? I think that might be a more appropriate question.
Yeah. So the key thing for me is just as Pat said, writing the style on the tap handle directly, because it's amazing how many people just walk past the board of the menu items and go look at the taps and question what you have. So that was one of my big changes right as I opened is people would just go straight to the taps, bypass the board. So I just started writing all the names on the board, and that actually helped people distinguish the styles and be able to figure out what they wanted to order a lot easier.
Great. And Josh had a follow-up question. Does that mean we have moved past people ordering based off the tap handle? For example, that dragon is cool. What is that? As beer professionals, we are looking for certain elements, but is the average consumer? I will chime in and say that I think the level of knowledge, and it depends on your area, the level of knowledge of the average consumer about beer is increasing. And I think the average consumer knows a little bit more now, but again, that is region based, but I'll let the other guys, the experts, chime in on that.
Man, you're giving us way too much credit. I'll say as well that I think Josh is onto something in one sense that people do order at a glance, but I think we are well past the era where someone is ordering based on the fact that Golden Rock, which is what I'm presuming you're referencing, has a really cool dragon tap handle. What they're really ordering from now, and this is something in the industry we forget about all the time, it's breweries aren't the first thing that the average consumer looks at. They look at style because they know what they like. I like IPAs. I'll start there. I like X. I'll start there. I like blonde ales. I'll start there. Then they move to breweries and see if there's anything they recognize. So I do think it's very, very important for people to be able to order at a glance. But if somebody is walking in and ordering based on just the appearance of the tap handle, the problem with beer, which is also the beautiful thing about beer, is it is an unbelievably versatile beverage. And no one really has gone in and just ordered based on a tap handle unless it's just to see if they like it in the first place. And that's not a recipe for a business. So people were always figuring out what they liked in that early experimental period and then ordering based on style, because they know if they stick, for example, to IPAs, they can probably screw around quite a bit and not get too far away from what they enjoy. But if they are walking in and saying, I'll order that one because I got a really cool Griffin, let's mix it up. Really cool Griffin on the tap handle. There's a solid chance that's a Belgian triple, which might not be something they enjoy. There's a solid chance it might be a sour, which is something they might not enjoy. So I don't think that's the risk. I think the risk is not being able to catch people's attention among other equivalent options within a flavor category. I always hate calling beer flavors, but within a flavor category.
Great. Now, shall we jump into the world of merch? That's everyone's favorite topic, how to sell more stuff. How do you guys use merch as an extension of your brand's visual identity? And which items have you had the most success with?
I'm going to stay away from this one because we are terrible at using merch. You guys are definitely going to have way more to contribute here.
So
I
I can start.
sorry, everybody within my company, we suck at it.
So for me, it's pretty simple establishing brand identity, being new to the area. So I just have my logo on it, have it nice and simple and big so people can actually see what it is. Because being new, you want to be able to put your name out there and people realize that, oh, hey, this is here, and location as well. So I've tried to put Stop Choppy Florida on everything. So when people see a t-shirt or a hoodie or anything like that, they'll be like, oh, that's there? I had no idea. So then that can bring more customers through. And then as far as what I sell the most of, anything with camo on it and slap koozies. The slap koozies are really big too.
Everybody loves a good koozie.
Man, I really loved 2006 in the beer industry.
I can speak to what it's been for us at Seismic here, but it's for us, when we're picking merch, it's not just trying to find the fastest, cheapest option. Because sustainability and quality are such a core value to us. We're looking for items. We're not looking to have, we're not looking to be PBR and put our brand on literally like thousands of different things. We're looking to have a handful of core items that are high quality, but also have sustainability in mind, whether that be ethical sourcing, made with recycled materials, like that kind of thing. Even down to like our point of sale materials, our tap handles, even our business cards are printed on high quality post-consumer recycled material. All these little details are extensions of your brand, and people may not see it up front, but it continues to paint that picture in the dialogue that you want to continue to have with your consumer. So the most popular things for us have been stuff that's like really important to us. So high quality shirts that are made with ethically sourced cotton and post-consumer recycled material. Disc golf discs have been really popular for us because that's just really part of that's just because it's important to our team. And I think if I could stress one thing with your merch, if your team's behind it and it's a reflection of who you are and your culture as a company, I think it's that much more likely to be successful because it's authentic.
And I'll say quality, the quality of the item as a, from the consumer side, like I'd rather purchase an item that's a high quality item that it's more than your kind of that heavyweight Gildan shirt. If I'm looking at shirts, you want something that feels nice. So that's my 2 cents in there. But can you tell that Elliot and Pat have breweries in different areas?
Don't say. And I think there's something to be said too about the one thing we lose track of in the industry is that we are selling a luxury product fundamentally. Like we are selling a product that people have decided they will spend a little more for higher quality. Why do we forget about that the moment that we're talking about something wearable? All I own are brewery shirts, and I don't know when the last time was I paid for one. Like I literally, I don't even know where the logo is. This is a Sierra Nevada shirt. I don't even work for Sierra Nevada. It's ridiculous, but it's an extremely comfy shirt. So, if you especially with clothing, think about it this way: is like, yeah, you could sell somebody probably maybe even the same number of lesser shirts that aren't as comfortable, but are they going to wear it? And are they going to wear it out of the house? And are they going to wear it as often? And isn't part of the goal of your merch to not just be a purchase, but also continued advertising? So if the goal is to benefit from that, give them something they want to wear. Give them something cool. Give them something that looks good. Give them something that's comfortable, because then they're going to wear it everywhere, and that's only going to benefit you.
Yeah, and advertising is great. Referrals are better. And whenever we get a customer that was referred to us by one of our current customers, we know right off the bat they're going to be a really great customer. They're going to be good to work with because they came referred. And I think it's the same thing with merch. If a friend of mine is wearing a shirt from a brewery, it's going to get a little bit more credit in my mind, at least. And so, yeah, looking at your customers as walking advertisements, but also walking referrals, I think can help.
Just don't call them walking advertisements. They hate that.
Well, a couple more questions. So how do we've got this concept of brand identity. Now we've talked about it in the sense of communicating it to your target customers. How do you communicate your brand identity internally to your employees, your distributors, to not the end user? And in what ways do you make it come alive? In what way do the employees help make it come alive?
I can jump into that one. I think for us, we try to be as vocal as we can with our core values, and we do highlight that a lot in the hiring process as well. So typically, people that come on board with Seismic are already sympathetic to a lot of our vision and values. But how we're communicating it on like a day-to-day basis is we try to have those values guide every decision we make. Like whether that's the difference of purchasing a certain piece of equipment now, or maybe down the line, or maybe never, or trying to find a new shirt vendor, or coming back to the merch conversation. We try to keep those values instilled in everybody and communicate them quite frequently. We try to do the same with our distributors. The point was made earlier about the distributors being like our first customer, right? So like we want them to share part of that customer experience and that journey. So we're trying to create consistency, not just for the end consumer, but for everybody involved in the process.
Elliot?
So as I am the only employee in my brewery, I really don't have much to add on this, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I would just go ahead and echo what Pat said, but I just add that one of the most important things that you can do is just make clear what your values are, make clear who you are, and how it is to be communicated to your staff. But the follow-up to that is to do exactly what he says. You have to live that. Your employees are closer to it than anybody else, and they're the ones who are going to have to do most of the explaining if somebody notices that you are not practicing what you preach. So when you say that you value, for example, sustainability and positive capitalism, like if you guys aren't doing that, then they're going to be the first people to notice, and that's going to reflect in the way that they're communicating it to customers. If you say that you are really about EDI and you look around and there's no one other than people who look like me in the entire company, that's a bit of a problem. So it's important to be able to take a look at what you are saying you are doing and seeing whether or not you are actually doing it, because your customers can see that, but even more than them, your employees can see that. And it's damaging to their morale and their faith in what you're building, and that will bleed over, whether they intended to or not, into the way that they interact with customers.
What are you currently working on right now to improve your brand? Aaron?
I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this. We're actually working on a rebrand right now. So I can't tell you, Ben. But as far as the brands that we work with, we spend a lot of time making sure that we're able to communicate those same messages that they would be communicating themselves. But we also try to instill in them. I mean, this industry is built by artisans. It's built by people who have built their companies from the ground up themselves. But it also means a lot of people are wearing a lot of hats. So if we're able to help some of our brands that we work with to communicate who they are better, it's not about changing the message. There's no point in us even talking to them if we have to change the message. That defeats the purpose of our existence. But if we can work with them and help them to speak it more clearly and help them to reach consumers and reach the people of the world, the beer drinkers of the world in a more clear and concise fashion, that can only benefit them and that can only benefit us. So we do quite a bit of, basically marketing consulting just to help companies that know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they represent. They just need help being able to find an audience for it.
Great, Pat.
Excuse me. For us, we're still, even though like in the scheme of craft beer, we're only a few years old, which I guess makes us part of the old guard now. But just in the short time we've been around, we've focused so much to this point on just brand awareness, just getting our logo on people's faces and getting our beer into people's hands and telling that story. And we're kind of hitting a point now where we're showing up at events and everything. And people are like, oh, Seismic, did you bring that Shattercone IPA? Which is great. That's exciting. But our next step that we need to be taking now is more brand engagement and creating these super fans and brand ambassadors, right? We talked about referrals earlier, right? That word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of advertising we have available to us as craft brewers. So how do we take that casual beer fan and turn them into a lifelong Seismic super fan? That's kind of the next place we're at with our brand journey, to use the marketing speak here. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Elliot?
And then where I'm at the brewery, the biggest thing for me is just consistency. So being new, being able to keep a consistently good product and consistently good merch out there is key to starting off and being successful within the industry, as you guys all know.
Awesome. And this is the last question I've got for you. What should people look for in the future from your brewery, from your brand, or not in the branding conversation? You have any interesting beers coming out? You have any events coming up? Any awesome thing that you guys are doing that you want to share?
Well, pick somebody to go first. We're all so damn excited.
Pat, you
We'll
want to
just
take it away?
stare at the screen until you read it.
Oh, mute.
Biggest things coming from us. So within the Seismic portfolio, we recently launched a new rotating double IPA called the Big One. So we try to stay within that seismic geological theme. That we rotate every couple of months. Different. It's always going to be 8% West Coast double IPA, but the recipe changes, processes change every time. And so we're on our fourth rendition now, where we're going to start launching that into 16-ounce cans. So we've always been in 12-ounce cans, and now we're making the shift into 16-ounce 4-packs for a couple of our beers. So we're excited to go into that new space and catch up with the rest of craft beer, because it seems like we bet on the wrong horse there for a bit. But other big thing is Tremor California. We launched it in 2020, and it's caught on like wildfire. People are eating it up. It's all they can. Can't get into their hands fast enough. So continue to develop and innovate within that portfolio as well. So keep your eyes peeled.
Good luck. Sounds exciting. And Elliot seems to have gone sideways, so we'll kick it over to Aaron.
Oh, I love it. Fantastic movie, too. Killed Merlot for basically ever, though. Hey, thank you, West Coast, for getting that joke. So to keep a lookout from us, biggest thing is we're going to have a whole lot of new brands that are reaching the market next year. Just brands that we're really helping to grow, whether they're restricted due to just not being able to afford a bigger system. They got people who want their beer, can't get there, or just aren't positioned well enough to be able to actually access the market. We all know it's kind of set up against you as a craft brewery. So keep a lookout for the new brands that are going to be rolling out, including up in February, Side Hustle Brews out of the United Arab Emirates. They are also going to be coming to Western Pennsylvania, building a destination brewery outside of Pittsburgh, and Fatty's Beer Works out of Charleston. But if I'm doing my job right, if I'm able to really do what I do best, it's really just about taking these brands that people love. They have great beer, they have a great story, they're great people, and just helping them reach the same kind of audience that I think we'd all really like to reach within the industry. It's hard out there. We got 3 tiers to cut through, and it's gotten extremely competitive. If we can provide a platform to help make it a little easier and let good beer, good people, good ethos, have its time in the sun, then that's what I want to do.
Yeah, and I think 2022 is going to be a fun year in the craft beer world. I think you had 2020 is what it was, and 2021 was people getting their lives, getting their businesses back and running smoothly again. And I think 2022 is when you're going to see a lot of those ideas that people have been really working on for the last 2 years start to come to fruition. So I'm really excited about the next year in craft beer for sure.
It'll finally be the year that Schwartz beer replaces IPA as the #1 style.
Yes. We're calling it now.
# drink more Schwartz.
Well, I want to thank both of you and Elliot, who we seem to have lost. I really appreciate you guys coming on and joining us and telling us about what you guys have going and how you guys have kept your brands consistent and taught everyone a little bit more about how to do things the right way, because you guys certainly seem to be doing that. So again, thank you for your time. And thank you everyone for watching.
Absolute pleasure. And if you are a brewery owner and you are looking for help reaching the market, please call me. It makes my job way easier. I hate working. I like it when you help me. I can leave my phone number in the notes, whatever you need.
Similar to Aaron, I'm here to be a resource. Conversation doesn't have to stop here. Happy to lend an ear if you're just frustrated with the creative process, or if you're looking to pick my brain about something. Let me know. Happy to help.
And if you are in an area that you can buy Seismic, please do it. It is delicious. Every beer I've had from there has been an absolute treat. So I recommend it. Oh, push off.
Making me blush. Stop.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us. So thanks everyone, and take care. Have a great night.
Thanks, folks.